welcome everybody to our absolutely real, not April Fool's Day happy hour session. We're calling it Vodka. Why is this nightcap different from all other nightcaps? Just because that seems to be fitting. We're in the middle of Passover right now, and we're talking about, a bunch of distilled spirits, so why not? But what I'd love to do is introduce our two guests today. And we have Daniel Undhammar, who is an old friend of mine, and he's the little guy over there in that box waving. He is the co-owner of Edgewater Spirits, which is the importer of vodka. And when I met him years ago, vodka was in his sphere because of the fact that he has a deep connection to it. But he'll tell you a little bit today of how he ended up making this full circle and is now a part owner of this brand, which is really exciting considering his Polish heritage. And then over here, I have Simon and Stacey with an E, who are from the Cordial Bottle Shop in San Leandro, California. And they're going to be talking to us today about their experiences with selecting vodka. I don't know if you guys have noticed throughout the group chat through the month, there's been a lot of questions about, does it really matter which vodka we get? They're all the same. And on one hand, the drinks will do pretty well with a lot of different vodkas, but there's an interesting topic to discuss based on why the bartenders chose what they chose and how vodkas do in fact differ from one another. So they're going to speak to that perspective that they have being owners of a bottle shop and of a bar. So we're going to start off our session today with Dan, and he's going to, Dan, you want to start off by telling us a little bit about the historical connection to Polish rye vodka?
Yeah, for sure. Good evening, everyone. Just being very happy and so fortunate to be, part of the Shaker and Spoon community, and of course knowing Donnie for many years. And my ties to vodka comes from many years working in the spirits industry, kind of growing up in kitchens and cleaning pots and pans, serving, cooking, and then I kind of made a transition over to the bar. Somebody was called in sick when I was a lot younger, a few decades ago, and just that. The service, started making cocktails, started training, appreciating spirits, and having a Polish background, a Jewish background on my mom's side, and then the not so great Swedish background on my dad's side. So growing up, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I might not look it, but the East meets West, the Cold War. And at Christmas and holidays, my parents would be like, we are bringing out the Swedish vodka. And my Polish mom would be like, what are you talking about? We're bringing out the Polish vodka. We're centuries before. My dad goes, Swedish one. I'm like, Mom, Dad, let's bring them both out. Fasting forward a bit, we purchased vodka about 4 years ago, and a great spirit, that just a great quality. And as Donnie was saying, there are a great differences between a lot of great vodkas. When we talk about Polish rye in particular, that kind of nice spicy notes, herbal notes, and also good hallmark of a good rye, like vodka would be, you get a little bit of a sweetness towards the end. Some would say a little bit of vanilla, some would say some almond notes. And my Polish roots on my mom's side, when I came to the US, and of course started working on a few different brands and leading up to vodka. Vodka comes from Western Poland, one of the oldest towns in Poland, which quite frankly makes it one of the older places on earth, called Kalisz. Kalisz used to be an old Jewish and Roman trade post. It's in Western Poland towards the German border, about 2 hours from the capital, Warsaw. And in Kalisz, going back to Roman times, so a few years ago, people would congregate. They would trade. They would come by horse, by carriage, by foot, and they would trade their wares, minerals, weapons, spices, tools, etc., to get one thing, that coveted Dębkowski rye to take with them. That's the same rye we use today, harvested from the fields, We bring it into the distillery, we crush it or mill it. We then add our water. We're very fortunate. We have a natural water source, and we cook it. Then we ferment it out for a few days, and then we distill it 5 times. We follow 200-plus-year traditional way of making good Polish vodka. And then we mellow it, or we filter it twice, and we let it sit and rest. And the relationship, of course, it's, proud Polish on that side of the family, of course, And, my dad's over the years, he's kind of like, I think he prefers, Polish vodka. So I think my mom won that one over. So, of course, a lot of links to it,
What's you're talking about your water source. Obviously, there's a deep connection with vodka as a spirit and water.
Yep.
And I would love for you to explain that to everybody.
Oh, no, of course. And thank you for mentioning that. We talk about the word vodka or vodka, spelt with a W. It actually means in Slavic, little water. So when you say voda, if you take the K, out, voda means water. So water, of course, is very, very important when we make any spirits, of course. But with vodka or with vodkas, whether it's a Russian vodka, it's a Scandinavian or Polish, whether potato, whether rye, or other grains or mixtures thereof, water is very important because we, of course, don't have the luxury as some fine aged spirits, to rest, whether that be 6 months, a year, 12 years, 15 years, like a great whiskey or great rum. So, of course, again, getting the water right is very important. We have a source at the distillery. How old? I don't know. But I do know a Pole, much, much, much wiser than me, many moons ago, discovered this natural water source. So he kind of counted his lucky chickens, went down and grabbed some water and tested it. And to his great belief and happiness, he didn't have to treat the water. Treating water is very, very expensive. And so with that, we have a natural water source. And where, of course, we start using the water in our third step, if you include harvesting. Harvesting, crushing, milling, and then we start cooking. We add the water. Then, of course, we add water throughout, cooling the liquids as well. So water is extremely important, and we're very, very fortunate to have a natural water source.
Well, and considering the fact that, 60% of your product is water, it's probably good to have a water source that's tasty, so.
Absolutely. And of course, again, if you look at nature today, when you have natural water, we're also fortunate to put less of a footprint, if you may, because we don't have to treat it, no added chemicals or whatnot to quote unquote clean it or recycle it. It's a natural source, and that with non-GMO Polish rye, and you're absolutely right, 60% of it's water, the other 40 is alcohol.
So one would think, that's an easy answer right there when people ask about, why is this vodka different from all other vodkas? Why are any vodkas different from one another? A lot of that is going to have to do with the water, easily a majority of that end product. And so just to take, one distillery that's, one part of California and another distillery that's another part of California, their water sources may be different. And so immediately, even if they're made from the same type of grain, and even if they're done in the same style, if their water sources are different, the product's going to be different.
For sure, 100%.
How far back does vodka as a concept go?
The spirit itself, you mean?
Yeah, it's use like the in terms of, we can date back to specific grape varieties in terms of wines.
Yeah.
In terms of vodka as a spirit category, how far back does that go?
I mean, in Poland, there's records going back even, obviously more towards similar to what you would call a gorzalka or samogonka, which means homemade or home burnt. Obviously more towards more of a primitive kind of crude brandy going back to the 8th century, 9th century. But vodka fully in Poland, the first expression and written dates back to 1405 in Sandomierz in southern Poland. And of course, this is always the fun debate between, Poland versus Russia. Of course, I might be a bit biased, my Polish heritage and roots, and that it comes from Poland. The first record of vodka being mentioned in Cyrillic, in writing in Russia, was in 1533, where Polish merchants brought their wares and their fine vodka to Russia. Of course, there's kind of similar to, your Scotch and Irish whiskey, where there's always the Scotch invented it, the Irish perfected it, or vice versa. So Poland was already mass producing, I should say, distilling and selling vodka already in the 17th century around in Europe, and including exporting it to Russia, to Sweden. So they've been around for, a few good centuries, where vodka, of course, year upon year has provenance. And of course, potato and rye and also wheat. And just like we had famines across Europe in the Middle Ages and later on, the myth, again, about potatoes, there's some great potato vodkas from different countries, Polish, Swedish ones, Russians one too. But during some times in Poland where they had famine and they had devastation of their crops, rye in particular, and rye, of course, being, where Poland has been a producer of exceptional rye dating back to Roman times, there were times where the rye crops for a few years were just decimated. And the only ones who could really afford to keep their rye fields in check were those of nobility who had gardeners and people looking after their lands. They're obviously specifying in agriculture. So those remained, and the Poles very quickly had to find a substitute to create vodka, because it was such a popular drink, and of course, something that, supported the finance of the country, and people were asking for it. And Poland is one of the largest potato producers per capita in the world. So another great, very clever Pole started realizing that they started making vodka out of potatoes, as well as sugar beets, many different varieties.
So you were talking about provenance earlier. One of the things that you're going to make today, and we're going to get into the story of that particular cocktail, has a very deep connection to New York City and the United States, where vodka came very late. So I would love for you to make the cocktail and tell folks a little bit about it and its background.
Certainly. So thanks for mentioning that, Donnie. Many years of bartending and running bars before working on brands and spirits, and looking back at, I guess, call me a cocktail geek or a nerd, but vodka, for those who don't know, didn't really start showing up in this beautiful part of the world, the United States, the late 40s and early 50s, in writing, in press, in books, in cocktail books, when the GIs and the soldiers were kind of coming back from Europe, from the Second World War. They would bring vodka with them. Of course, a lot of us cocktailians or bartenders or enthusiasts that enjoy drinking and learning. The Moscow Mule, I think, was, the one they called with a kick. Different stories. I think it was 1948 at Cock and Bull Tavern in LA, if I'm not mistaken, Danny. However, there were one cocktail in particular when I was living in New York, and there's an old classic institution called the Russian Tea Room. And according to legend and some stories too, in the late 30s, 37, 38, it was a place where a lot of the Polish and Russian dancers that were practicing day in and day out, practicing new moves for the show, to then, of course, perform in front of a great audience day in and day out, evening in, evening out. They found this place where they would congregate. They felt a little bit of home. They got a little bit of food. They got, some of the yummy little pickled veggies and pierogies and good vodkas, Polish and Russian. Nice.
And some Riga Sprats.
You gotta have those. And a bartender there, I'm gonna try and make it and talk less. I'm just getting very excited about it. And what happened was he created a delicious cocktail in kind of their homage. And the cocktail, he named it the Gypsy Queen. And it is, I believe, one of the first vodka cocktails in American print, 1937, some say 1938. And many different ratios have been done. I like to do a 2-on-1, especially when I'm working with a great rye-based vodka. Again, I'm bringing out some of those herbal notes, some of those rye notes, little spiciness, little nice sweetness. So it's a true American, Polish, Russian classic. I'm then also using Benedictine. And Benedictine, a great ancient herb spice liqueur, 27, still secret recipe, dating back a couple of 100 years.
Yeah, for those of you who are with us on our rye happy hour, we talked a little bit about chartreuse, and then we actually spoke about it a little bit more a few months back, and talked about its history and the way that it's made. Two different groups of monks who each have the secret recipe, and they're never allowed to travel together. It's this great story. Benedictine, like 10 years ago, had its 500th anniversary. It's an incredible product, and it's used in a couple of really well-known cocktails that you all know. And for some reason, it still doesn't. It only pops out once in a while. So I'm going to post the recipe here. Normally the way that I make it a little bit on the smaller side, but you're doing a 2-to-1 ratio. So you're doing 1.5 to 3/4, or are you doing 2 to 1?
2 to 1. 2
Okay.
ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of Benedictine.
And then you're doing 1 dash of Ango?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I'm going to post that here so everybody can see that. If you look, and again, we've talked about this within the group many times before. You guys can look up one particular cocktail and see 17 different recipes. So if you were to look this up elsewhere, you'd see 1.5 to half. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. It's very different. That's a much boozier drink, and it is in fact closer to the way that it was printed in the Russian tea room booklet, which I think you said I think it's 37 or 38. But keep in mind that if you have places where you like to look for recipes, look in more than one place. Look at liquor.com, look at Esquire, because the different authors, like we talked about with Ryan Mabey regarding rye whiskey, different authors like different things, and they're potentially going to put their sway on how they recreate an old cocktail, especially when so many recipes are all parts of bar stories, and people are sharing those stories once they've had a couple cocktails. So it's not necessarily always accurate.
And I thought it'd just be fitting to throw it in one of my dear wife's grandparents' old glassware from the 40s they purchased in Japan many, many moons ago.
Can you bring that close so everybody can see it? That is very cool. Is that like a golden tree design on the bottom?
I believe so, and it comes off. So already
wow.
Back then there were, she brought the whole set. She's smiling from heaven. My wife's Dutch heritage family, her grandparents, and they have also kind of these little liqueur glasses and fitting port glasses as well. They're just very, very cool. Normally I'll use them when I'm making my Scotch cocktails or something, but the Gypsy Queen, fitting for a queen in a glass. So that's a Gypsy Queen.
Excellent. Well, cheers to everybody. Whatever it is that you're drinking at home, please enjoy that. And thank you, Dan. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.
I actually, just in preparation, brought the Sprats down. This is like, for any of you who are, we'll get into it a little bit later in terms of pairing. One of the things that's really great about vodka is its neutrality. And again, texture, taste, aroma, they really are all different. But this is something you can get at like Cost Plus, or you can get, at any store that has products from Spain where they do a lot of tinned fish. Being able to have something that's oily that the vodka can cut through, any sort of smoked fish, that's always really excellent. It's a terrific pairing. You don't have to make a dish for it. You really can have it right out of the tin. It's meant to be enjoyed that way. And a lot of places that do Russian style drinks and food. They also they will do caviar, like caviar service with vodka. It's actually really interesting. It's a great way to enjoy the spirit and enjoy the food.
Totally, with a little blini and a little sour cream sometimes.
Yeah, and again, it's one of the ones that you and I were talking about earlier is the Carlson's Gold, which is new. It's from Sweden and it's new potato, and it's fascinating. If you are into sort of like funky products, if you're into Jamaican rum, it's a weird transition, I know, but if you're into that kind of like smoky funkiness, Carlson's Gold is a really interesting vodka to check out. If you make any vodka drinks out of a book, it's going to be a completely different story with that product. Does anybody have any questions for Dan? Well, he's not going away, but if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask, or you can pop it into the chat. But either way, we'll have another session with him at the end.
I had a quick question for him.
Go for it, Andy.
Oh, sorry. I saw that you put the ice in the glass beforehand. Was that just to chill it?
At times, you mean in the glass?
Yeah, I saw that you loaded it up and then you threw it out.
Yeah, sometimes just to chill the glass. And this comes from many years in the industry where sometimes we didn't have the luxury of space to put our standard glassware or anything that we're going to serve up in a fridge or freezer. So at times we would even have glasses set up with ice in them, and we would change the ice if it had been melting for too long, just because you're thinking the shelf life. You want to enjoy that nice and cold. And especially if that drink was served to a waitress who's then going to take it to a very large restaurant at the other end, by the time she serves it to the customer, it's almost lukewarm. So just to chill it down extra.
Okay, cool. I just thought that was a really ingenious way to do that.
Oh, thank you.
You'll see a lot of people, like, at home, we keep a couple of coupes in the freezer. That way you can just sort of grab them. If you have the room to do that, that's always nice, but you have to have like a little bit of extra room. For those who, look at what other people post in the group, you see people's home bars are getting very out of control in the best possible way. Not just with their liquor collections, but also just like the setup in general. So I've seen people who will take a dorm room sized fridge, but that size just for a freezer, just for glassware, extra ice, clear ice. So you make the clear ice in your larger freezer and then take it out, cut it, and put it into your smaller freezer just to have it on hand. Bless you. But there are, but as Dan said, like at our bar, we did not have we had very little refrigeration. So one of the things we did is we actually had a container of pressurized liquid nitrogen, and we would pour it into the glass and let the glass chill as we made the cocktail, toss the liquid nitrogen out where it immediately evaporates, and then we have a frozen glass because we did not have the room to keep the glassware. So that's a great question, Andy. Somebody else had a question that I lost for a second. I felt like I heard somebody else. Okay. Then we will move on to Stacey and Simon. Dan, thank you very much. That was awesome. One of the things that we're going to have later for trivia is someone's going to win that Gypsy Queen. So you're going to get some cool ingredients in the mail, including the vodka and some Benedictine and some bitters. So I'd love to move on to Stacey and Simon. If you guys can, I called this section, "Why is this delight different from all other delights?" I would love to hear from you how you go about selecting vodkas when, as a retail store owner, you have a lot of suppliers like Daniel coming to you and, telling you about their great product with its great heritage. How do you go about selecting from all of these different vodkas, especially since, again, a lot of our subscribers are asking, how are these things different from one another?
Thanks for the intro. So Stacey and I, we have the two shops. We have one in San Leandro. We just opened this combination spirits retail and wine bar here in Castro Valley. We have been in the business for about 5 years. Stacey has a fashion background. We opened the San Leandro shop in Valentine's Day 2016. This place we just opened December 19th. of 2020. So we're pretty
Wow.
new here.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, you guys are amongst the first to have a conversation with us in this space.
You thought to yourself, you know
Without
what
a
I'd
mask
like
on,
to
yeah.
do right now? Yeah, yeah.
Vodka, yeah, it's we do sell a lot of vodka. That seems to be a spirit that is heavily impacted by trends more than I would say just about any other. Whiskey tends to be pretty stable. Tequila varies a little bit. You know, newer spirits to the market like mezcals are just on a consistently upward trajectory just because they're new. Vodka kind of follows the whims of, I would say, popular culture and what people are doing with it. There's probably, whenever a James Bond movie comes out, there's probably a significant spike in vodka sales. Yeah, Vesper martinis and people doing vodka martinis. So, so vodka for us, its greatest strength is its neutrality. You were talking a little bit about the different foods that vodka can go with, caviar and tinned meats and you know, rich fatty foods. It's really hard to pick anything else where you know, just out of the bottle and in the glass, it's going to pair well with all that stuff. It's almost impossible to find any other flavor that can be enjoyed with as versatile a range of foods and other flavors in a cocktail. So it's particularly great if you're making a cocktail and you want the flavor of another ingredient to really shine. Like if you are making a cocktail with elderflower or with fresh fruit, something that's nice and seasonal, and you want to keep that integrity of that focused ingredient alive in the glass. It's tough to do that with other spirits, and with vodka, it's kind of a guarantee. So we've got a lot of people who buy vodka for those reasons. There's a lot of people who nowadays are, especially in our area, are extremely health conscious, and for whatever their particular health needs are, they want vodka for one reason or another. Either it's because they really want to avoid gluten, and because of the high distillation point of vodka, there's less of the base ingredient left in the bottle. Some people suffer less hangover effects from vodka than they do from any other spirit, and we get a lot of people asking for those reasons. When it comes time to choose a vodka or any product for our shops, we've got kind of a checklist, and it varies slightly from place to place, but it's we have, let's say, 10 criteria that we like to meet. And if we can meet 5 of those, then a product might be a good candidate for us. So, you know, those are things like sustainability, independent ownership, locality, if it's something that's available locally. And this is another case in which vodka is a great exemplar of something that can be sourced locally. No matter where you are in the United States, there's probably a vodka being made within 100 miles of you. That can't be said for...
If you live somewhere good.
Yeah, right.
But somebody's making it somewhere, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's impossible for us to source a locally made tequila or scotch. It just doesn't exist. But there's a number of great vodkas here being made from, you know, a great breadth of different ingredients.
Right. So if you're not from here, those checklists kind of still exist. Independently owned, sustainability. For us, kind of ease of communication with the ownership across seas. So still the partnership. It is very much still for the hospitality industry, and we value definitely the relationships we have with our partners. Yeah, and so our customers also feel that connection to the ownership when we bring in, like, we met the guy that distills this, and they like to be a part of that. So that's a big part of that too. We can have a relationship with the people, even if they're overseas. It resonates well with the customers.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, I mean, one of the things we've talked about in the happy hour many times, it's all about knowing your audience, and that it doesn't matter whether you are a supplier, whether you're a bartender, whether you are someone who's making a drink for one person or for tens of thousands of people, like with Shaker and Spoon, or a shop. You really have to know your audience, and especially with your limited shelf space, you know, that's your real estate, and you really have to value that. So that's why I kind of wanted to pick your brain and have you, you know, tell our audience here how, you know, what some of the selection criteria are. one of the big ones, especially for, I mean, anywhere, but particularly in the Bay Area, you get a lot of people who are looking for local products. So the funny thing is that the St. George all-purpose vodka was actually one of the recommended, vodkas for the upcoming vodka box by a bartender in Atlanta.
Right.
So, I mean, she chose it, honestly, it's, Kelly Thorne, she chose it because she loves the product and she can't help but love that product. And of course, it has a huge following in the Bay Area and everything that they produce. I can't think of one bar that you go into and they wouldn't have at least a handful of St. George Spirits products. So,
yep.
What about local versus actually good? Because that's something that happens often, where someone pitches a great thing, it's a great marketing plan, it's a great story, but you're like,
Absolutely. That's probably the box. If you were to line the boxes up, that's a box that's bigger than the others, is how much we actually enjoy the product. It becomes very difficult to sell a product that you don't stand behind and that you wouldn't enjoy yourself or you wouldn't take home. It's a great selling point when you say, I've got that bottle open on our counter at home. I drank some this morning on the way to work.
Yeah. We can walk to work.
We can walk to work.
Oh, okay, then it's fine.
Yeah. So, it certainly, we get reps in here all the time, not just with vodkas, but it did happen this week with a vodka distillery came in and, they're West Coast and they really are pushing their product hard. And they have a good story and they're independently owned and they check a lot of boxes. And there's certainly a great value, which is one of our boxes. But we didn't fall in love with the product. Not that we have to be in love with it, but we have to like it more than we did. And so it's probably not going to find its way onto our shelf. The caveat to that is the customer is always right in a sense that if the market starts directing interest in that way, then, the customers can override our own personal preferences.
I was gonna say that happens a lot.
Yeah.
You just trip, you're like, I try it, okay, that doesn't check our boxes, but okay. But you get it from 10 customers, check 12, 13, okay.
Yeah, that's when you learn to appreciate the product.
Yeah.
So and that's something that's actually very relevant to the Shaker and Spoon crowd, because it's funny, this past month with the vodkas, the distribution on the vodkas was pretty fantastic. I mean, we have a Polish rye, a grain and Bartlett pear from California, and then organic grain from Eugene. And the distribution across the United States is fantastic. But we have a lot of people looking for product, and they had a lot of trouble because a lot of the smaller stores that are near them didn't necessarily have it. So what we're trying to tell folks over time is don't sweat it. Like, you find out about a month before the box comes out, go and talk to your local store. We love, supporting independent shops. Go to your local store and be like, hey, I'm looking for this product for this purpose. Do you think that you can get it for me? And sometimes the store is able to do without, especially if it is, available in the state, they can get it as part of another delivery of something else. Or they can choose oh, that sounds really cool. Maybe you get a couple of them. Sometimes we have Shaker and Spoon subscribers who have formed groups. And so they go in and they know they can go in that 6 people will want. So immediately they can pick up a 6-pack of something.
Right.
Which is really great. But at the same time, a small store like yours, you can't just sort of stock every single thing that somebody comes in and asks for.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of us are open to special orders, and a lot of distributors can do 1 bottle, so can send just 1 bottle to us, which means we can also save. It might cost a little bit more, but we can do it.
Right, especially if you already have someone that is coming in and asking for it. They're like, let me know the moment you have it. I have my name on it. That's great.
For sure.
And then also one of the things I wanted to ask you was, when people come in and ask you for vodka, how do you steer them? Just like there are ones that you would choose to carry in the store, there are obviously ones, as you said, that you like. How do you steer, what questions do you ask your customer in order to steer them in the direction you think they're going to like the most?
So I definitely like to ask if there's a flavor profile that they're after. And if they say no flavor, then that gives me a very clear direction to go in. And I also like to find out what their price point is, so I'm not steering them in a direction that they wouldn't want to go. And then lastly, I'm asking for an application. Are you enjoying this in a mule, or are you sipping it after dinner with your Russian grandfather, who wants a specific style of vodka, and we better not disappoint.
Or Polish grandfather.
Or Polish grandfather. I mean,
yeah.
Or your grandfather from Alameda, whatever.
Polish grandfathers are more forgiving in my experience.
Or Swedish.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Swedish. Yeah, forget it.
So somebody had mentioned, and that was the thing. So Stephanie mentioned, she wasn't able to get the vodka she was looking for, and because of the fact that vodka used to be my house vodka at our bar because it's consistent. It's actually. Sorry, Dan, close your ears. It's actually idiotic how inexpensive it is for the quality. I'm just like, this is nuts. Like, how can I get it? So one of the things she mentioned that her shipping cost, 1.5 times the actual cost of the liquor, which unfortunately makes your decision very easy. Like, I just can't, especially during COVID, as a lot of the restrictions have been lifted, or at least temporarily lifted, people are able to get things from other parts of the country that are either not distributed in their state, or they live in a part of the state where even if there's distribution, it's just never going to get to that store. They don't always have a cordial bottle shop like you guys near them, and they are not going to have really cool owners who are willing to go out on a limb for them.
And that's a big part of our value add. As a small business, you have to differentiate yourself. And that's how we chose to do it, by not carrying the supermarket stuff, and then also just being available to answer questions to people. I mean, that's huge. I mean, how many people have even the option of going to a store while somebody will speak to them? I mean, even the big specialist stores, people there don't necessarily know the product, or they usually don't. And if they're around, they're busy and can't really help when we take the time to do that. And I think that's just an important part of who we are and what we do.
Understood. Do y'all have any questions for these folks? They're a pretty good resource in terms of being able to talk about the vodka as a category, and they're honestly the voice that most of us are speaking to in terms of trying to pair up our shaker and spoon cocktails with the bartender's recommendations, and so they can actually speak pretty well to that. So again, we're gonna have some time to go back a little bit at the end. So if you guys, Mary Beth wants to know, what are some of your favorite vodkas?
Yeah, so
St. George all purpose.
Yeah, the St. George that you mentioned before is wonderful. We tend to like vodkas with a little more flavor. That's just our personalities. We there's one from Grayton Distilling called D. Benham's vodka, which is a mixture of grape and grain. That's really wonderful. There's a great vodka coming out of Humboldt County. It's all organic, made from sugarcane, called Humboldt vodka. We also love Polish vodkas. I'd love to try the vodka. I don't know that I've had it on its own. I've seen it on bar menus certainly, and I'll get some in as soon as I can.
So there you go.
Yeah. So that's a few of them.
There's a couple coming from Japan too.
Oh, sure.
That I've enjoyed.
Yeah, Nika makes a great one. Haku, another great one. Suntory.
Yeah, and again, the provenance is really important because of the water. Great. So I brought a couple things to show everyone. It's Carlson's Gold. I believe it is spelled this way, Carlson's Gold, and that's it right there. Okay. I brought a couple of weird things for people to. So obviously, like the Blood, Sweat, Tears, you guys are familiar with that. Really excellent. Like, I honestly hadn't had it before this selection, and then I tasted it, and that's really what made me excited about it because of the texture. It's that same thing. Like, you know what you're getting out of Eastern European and particularly Polish rye, because it's just so distinct and like peppery and spice and actual taste to it. But then you have something kind of cool, like out of Eugene, who knew, that has an actual weight and texture to it, which is cool. This one, you probably will not find anytime soon. This is distilled from horse milk. I just want you to all have that soak in for a second. I saw a couple eye rolls. That was pretty good. It's called Arag. It's a Mongolian product, and it's called Khan's, the original Arag vodka. And they tell you what season it. This is from the season of 2018 from Tianshan. There it is, the horse. It is really interesting. It has, because of the fact that it's actually, they're distilling from a lactic product, it has a very interesting texture. So if you ever see, there's one from Vermont, I can't remember what it's called. Simon or Stacey, do you remember what I'm talking about? There's
the Black Cow
vodka that's made from, I think it's called like Black Cow.
Yeah, there's Black Cow from cow's milk. Yeah,
there's also this guy. So oops, hold on, there we go. So this is basically, and Dan, you might recognize this. Are you familiar? This is, well, probably because it's Russian, you don't want to talk about this, guys. This is a very interesting product where it's distilled under 40% because of the fact that they really want, it's a copper still distillation, and it's considered to be the predecessor to vodka, and it's very interesting. If you ever see Poligar at a store somewhere, and it may be like a store where they just had it sort of sitting around for a while, it's an old bottle, pick it up. It's very interesting, and you could make a lot of great cocktails with it that you wouldn't consider to be like normal vodka cocktails, like old fashions. To take something that wouldn't be considered a anything other than like a whiskey or an aged drink, and to be able to make like an old fashioned out of it. We want to, as we always do, reconnect about the status of the hospitality industry. So obviously we have two very unique perspectives here. We have one of a brand owner and one of an operator, both on premise, meaning a bar, restaurant, and off premise as a store. So, Daniel, based on some of the experiences you've had both as a brand owner, as a supplier, but also, being where you are in Florida on the Gulf side, what are some sort of silver lining stories? What are some interesting things that you've seen bars and restaurants do, and how have you been able to work with them to sort of, help them through what has been a very interesting year?
Yeah. Well, as you said, a year that has truly been different, and of course, very challenging for many. We, myself and team, we, of course, when everything started happening, we of course had to. We're a small company, and we try to keep our lights on, and support every day as we try to do, and where the lights were still on, of course, and safe to do so, we would try and help those bars that would do cocktail programs to go, of course, where we had smaller bottles or vessels that would kind of help as a and like to go kits, cocktail kits to go. Down here in Tampa Bay too, we had a few of our bars and restaurants that just ingenious what they were doing. They were also selling lunches and dinners to customers for all the first aid workers, all the nurses, all the doctors that were just working tirelessly and still are. So we would of course also go and buy a good amount of lunch and dinner, so here as a thank you and kind of an appreciation, right? And there's a great bar in Tampa called the Hub Bar. It's an old dive bar, but it's a great spot. And whenever you come this way, when it's possible to, Donnie, I'm going to take you there. It's been around since I think the 40s, and it's kind of where the bartenders meet in Tampa Bay, or used to, when they finish their shift, go have a shot on the beer. And it also has a little liquor store, very conveniently, when, if you want to buy something to go home, and the guy who runs it, great guy, old school bartender. So I said, I was talking to him and I said, hey, Cameron, please tell me, beyond regular support and what we do, what can we do? And, knowing myself from years of bartending, and, there's a lot of people having really tough times. And it's like, well, what do you think if we get some stuff for them, some food? So I said, you know what, leave it to me. Leave it to Beaver. So I filled up my truck. I have a big black Toyota 4Runner. It's got a lot of space in the boot. So I went and I think I bought about 50 or 60 packs of pasta. I think 20 or 30 packs of pasta sauce. I don't know how many pounds of, minced meat. And of course, quite a few bottles of vodka. And I rolled up, and Cameron literally came out of the place with the one shopping cart they have in a little liquor store. And we filled that, and he rolled that back in. And, just the little gestures, as you said, the silver linings. And, and bartenders would come and they would grab, to make some food at home or to share, just, again, a lot of times those little things that help, and that was one of them, and I hope that a lot of the states will continue where they can to have, like a temporary off-premise license. I've noticed, I did travel a bit, but safely. I was driving, where they would sell bottles as well, and it helped a lot. So we always try to help push that too, and support that the best we could. And I hope some of them will still be able to, sell bottles too, any way to help, and, other revenue streams. Obviously not to take away competition from, great local liquor stores, but, where it's another way. And these cocktail to-go kits, they're so great. That a lot of bars noticed in Florida too. A lot of them that were struggling too. They were doing a lot of, and it was like, the traffic was incredible. So different vessels as well. If it starts continuing, we have these. They're like old school mason jars. So I have one here where I've kind of made trying to replicate my dear Oma's recipe of pickled vegetables that goes well with vodka. But these are great too for, little cocktail kit to go, So a few different ways, not trying to reinvent the wheel, but, trying to help and trying to find other ways too,
We had, obviously, Daniel Singer, who's been really done a great job. And a lot of the Shaker and Spoon folks will know him as well. He's the owner of Filthy Foods. And so a lot of you guys know their cherries and their olives and their onions. They just make a terrific product, and they've worked with us now for a few years, and they make amazing things to go into your cocktail at a level that you would expect for a great cocktail. And one of the things that I really like, we haven't had a chance to talk about it much, is vodka martinis are very underrated. I love gin, so I think a lot of bar people sort of shrug or eye roll about vodka martinis, but vodka martinis can be really great. A 50-50 with a fresh vermouth and really nicely made olives. For those of you who have ever tried the Shaker and Spoon Tidy Martini, that's a favorite. Between that sort of that brininess that you get, and although the recipe was originally made by Stacey Swenson to be just a vermouth cocktail, doing it as a 50-50 vodka martini and then following the rest of the recipe is just an outstanding drink. Just such a fun way to experience a really great spirit, and also get accustomed to really understanding what vermouth is all about and why it's so important. Just like the water that goes into making these various products. And it's a great way also, if you're wondering, how do I tell the difference between these vodkas? Make a Tidy Martini, make a Gypsy Queen like Dan did for everybody. Those are really great ways to show off that base spirit without having it covered up by citrus and sugar and whatever. You were gonna say something?
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. Sorry, Donnie, you're hitting the point there. Another great way, which I'm sure many of you know how to try out a great vodka, actually, like many other spirits, try room temperature. Add a touch of water to it. Scientifically, of course, it releases the enzymes. Romantically, it releases the bouquet. And you try that vodka room temperature, give a little swirl, a little smell, a little taste. You know, that's another great way of trying a great vodka, just like you would another spirit at room temperature.
Did you say romantically it'll release a little bouquet?
Well, you know, for many years working on whiskeys and like almost 10 years with Chivas Brothers, we would always say, you cut the whiskey. And if people didn't know, what is he talking about? Obviously scientifically, or, you know, the enzymes, but then not everyone likes that lingo. So you'd say more romantically, it releases the bouquet, like the aroma of the flowers. It's like, and then I get into, imagine if you walk across a soccer pitch that's just been cut and it's been raining, you can smell the grass, just like you can walk into a forest, the same forest every day, dry day for a year. Then you walk in through that forest just after it's rained. Guess what? You can literally smell the forest. Sorry.
No, I think that's a great thing. And it's one of the things that, again, I think people don't understand in terms of vodka, because of the fact that people can, honestly, a lot of it has to do with the TTB, you know, and the way that it's defined as, you know, odorless, colorless, tasteless. They shouldn't be. They should be interesting. They should have some semblance of, you know, the terroir. Granted, you know, if it's been filtered a bunch of times or way over distilled and stripped, or, you know, triple column, et cetera, there are so many ways that it really can be neutral and not have a lot of character. But the ones that are out there that are interesting are, I think that's such a great analogy of, you know, even like a wet sidewalk. There actually are some vodkas out there that smell like your childhood after a rain, like when you want to go play outside and the concrete is porous and it starts to absorb that rain and you get that smell. And it's just so interesting. Thank you. That's a great, I'm now going to be thinking about like wet forest floor. So
thanks, Donnie.
Yeah.
Do you remember what Smirnoff said in the early 50s in America? It leaves you breathless.
That was, I mean, that was their ad. That was their ad. But thank you. And that's one thing that we skipped was actually how vodka became popular. It was because of the fact that people could have it like in their coffee or in their cups at work, and it would be clear, and you wouldn't smell it so much on your breath. So congratulations, Hollywood. They're leading the way yet again. Stacey and Simon, with your perspective being you know, owners both on the on-premise and the off-premise side, what things have you done in terms of like status of the industry? What have you been able to do to be successful? What have you seen other people do in your, you know, in your area that has helped them through this last year?
Well, us specifically, I mean, we've got, because we're a retailer, retailers were generally positively affected in those states in which the retailers didn't have to close, but restaurants and bars did, which is what happened here. So our revenue on the retail side had a positive increase, and you know, we opened our place here which has the on-prem component in December. So we haven't had a time without COVID, and we haven't had a time where we could serve patrons in this establishment yet. And certainly, if we didn't have a retail component here, we wouldn't be conducting this meeting from here. We'd be elsewhere, and we would have shut this project down. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of the state of the industry, and we certainly see our patrons are learning things that they wouldn't have learned otherwise. You know, they're at home mixing things that they would have had somebody else mix for them, taking the initiative to kind of learn, why do I like this cocktail? Why do I like this product? And why don't I like that? And how do I grow that into a bigger holistic knowledge?
I mean, we've come from, at the beginning of COVID, it would be vodka and tonic. And then now, months later, like they're leaving with like casefuls of liqueurs and making, I don't know, way more complicated and complex cocktails at home.
I'm sure no one in this chat right now has any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's been really great to be able to send people to small places like yours, and especially like yours, who really care about the products that you have and want to spend time with your customers and really help them find what it is they're looking for rather than just try and sell them stuff. It's something that I feel different. You're talking about how, you know, different vodkas differentiate themselves from each other and how we as people tasting them differentiate in order to buy them. I think it's been really interesting both to see how the Shaker and Spoon community and how Shaker and Spoon deals with it in order to like help people find, you know, interesting ways to use their time and their creativity, and also sending them to great shops where, quite honestly, you know, people give a shit. It's really nice to see all of these, you know, independently owned stores, you know, benefiting from people's curiosity. I'm gonna leave it open for a couple of more questions. If anyone has questions, either for Dan or for Stacey and Simon, I'm gonna leave it open here. You can either pop it in the chat or you can unmute. Just want to be able to give folks a couple more opportunities to ask them any questions. One of the things that I found really interesting, and this is, you know, both for Dan and for Stacey and Simon, is you know, reading publications or having people share different things within the group has been really interesting. So, you know, for the most part, we've been very focused on the customer and making sure that people are enjoying and they're having a good time. And people have been really great about sharing new ideas, new recipes, new products that they're finding. And through that, I actually found this, because we're talking about vodka, there's a vodka called Vusa vodka, V-U-S-A vodka. And somebody had a sample and I tried it. It was really interesting. In general, we don't get excited about vodka because it's, you know, considered to be neutral. But it's supposedly the first vodka being imported into the US from Africa. And so it's this super interesting story. And actually, you know, one of our trivia winners today is actually going to be one of the few people in the United States who's going to have a bottle of it. So it's actually very cool. It's kind of like a fun little thing that you know, Simon and Stacey probably won't even see it for you know, another few months until it's properly imported into the country. But somebody here is going to get some contraband, basically, is what I'm saying. But it's always worth trying. Just like someone wants you to try a tequila or a whiskey, it's worth trying different vodkas because you never know. You might find something that really surprises you, or maybe something that, you know, your cat likes, you know, just in case. I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, she, yeah, he looks like he probably likes a good vodka martini from time to time. So, okay. Any questions? Okay, so great. We have two questions. Dan, do you want me to ask your questions, or do you want to? Okay, so
go ahead.
I'm gonna, because you know the answers already. So these are going to be two-part questions because the prizes are really great. So the person who gets this one right is actually going to win the Gypsy Queen. You're going to get a bottle of vodka. You're going to get some Benedictine and some bitters. So Dan's two trivia questions are, and again, you have to do both of the answers correctly together in one submission in the chat, and the first person to get them both right wins that prize. Okay, question number one for Dan. What is the name of the ancient city that vodka comes from, which is coincidentally the oldest city in Poland? And two, in what year was the first time the word vodka was ever recorded in print? Damn, Mary Beth, wow, that was fast.
Oh my God.
Holy shit. Okay. So
I honestly thought that would be like a minute at least, or, you know.
I'm telling you, they pay attention. It's nuts. That was really
Congratulations.
Really quick. Yeah, Andy, sorry, you did get smoked on that one. Apologize. Dan, if you would be so kind as to, so not only did she get it right, but she spelled it correctly. Would you be so kind as to pronounce it correctly? It's K-A-L-I-S-Z, pronounced
Kalisz.
Okay. Which means because you didn't spell it earlier and you only said it, she went and looked it up because she spelled it correctly in her submission. So I feel like I want to give you extra points, but that's pretty awesome. Congratulations on that one. That was really great.
I wanted to tell you a funny story about Kalisz, Donnie.
Yeah.
So when I was living in Poland, after I moved from London to Poland to just relearn my mother's tongue, Polish, and I opened up a few bars, got back into running bars and working on brands. I went to college once with a very good Polish friend of mine and a very good Swedish friend of mine. And I'm, you know, Polish, Jewish, Swedish. So he's so proud to show, you know, there's some old ruins and old castles. So we get up to the thing, the big board, we see the castle, the ruins, it's beautiful. And he starts reading for us, and it's in English. I'm like, oh, and this castle, when it was destroyed by the Swedes. And he just like, that's it, I'm leaving. Me and my buddy were like, oh, we're so sorry. You know, this is like 700 or 800 years ago. But it was just one of those, you know, cultural, but, you know, of course, a bit of a, you know, fun, you know. That
it's the Hatfields and the McCoys. You know, if
right?
there's something to argue about from 800 years earlier, why not? There's always a fun opportunity to do that.
Totally.
Second, please. Questions number 2. Simon and Stacey, do you want to ask the 2 questions?
We didn't get a time to confab, so yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, so the two questions that are related to the Cordial Bottle Shop and the related lounge. There's 2. You can give me, it's a 2-parter, but the first one is you can give me either of these. What were the opening dates of the shop and the bar respectively? And what industry was Stacey in before joining the hospitality business? We've got some very good guesses so far.
Might have been the way I said it. Might have been.
No. It was very. You said it very clear.
Okay.
So again, it's either of the dates. You don't have to give me both, but the opening date, either of the shop or the bar, and also the business that Stacey was in first. But you have to get it in one message, like in one chat message. We got a couple people who are really close. Oh, there we go. Kylie got it.
Kylie.
Okay. Really well done. That was a good struggle there. Okay. So that was great. Kylene, do me a favor and message do a private message to Shaker and Spoon in the chat of the email address that you use for your Shaker and Spoon account so that we can find you. Okay. And congratulations, you guys. That was really fun. So what you guys are going to get is Kylene, what you're going to get is the Vuza vodka, that African vodka. You're going to be one of the very few people in the United States to have it. And also a Tidy Martini kit from Shaker and Spoon. So everyone's going to get a little something fun. But I really want to thank our guests for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time, especially with, you know, juggling 2 businesses, one of which you opened in the middle of a global pandemic, which is amazing. And Dan, thank you for you know, sharing this time with us and opening up your kitchen. And to all of our Shaker and Spoon family, thank you guys so much. You know, we love every moment with you and really appreciate all of the energy that you put into the group and into each other every day. So thank you guys and cheers. Cheers, guys.
Can't wait to see your store.
Enjoy. Happy April Fool's Day. I hope that you're able to like nail a good family or friend with a good practical joke today. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you, Donnie.
Bye.
Thank you, Shaker and Spoon.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.